Hey, what's going on, guys? Adam here, and welcome to the video. Today, I'm going to share with you how I saved my first $100,000. My net worth is past that now, but I want to recap what I did in my earlier years to get to that point. If it's a goal for you too, hopefully you get some inspiration and ideas from this video. So let's rewind and see what I did to get my first $100,000 before the age of 25. So my journey began back in high school. The first thing I did was apply to a metric ton of jobs right when I got my driver's license in the summer of 2009. This was a little over a year after the big financial crisis in 2008, so times were tough. Eventually, I landed a job gently patting the like button to pet the YouTube algorithm. It only takes a second and it's totally free. Nah, just kidding. That would have been a dope job though. For real, I eventually landed a job ripping tickets at the local movie theater. It was part-time and minimum wage, which was around $7 an hour back then, so I wasn't making much at all. Thankfully, I was living with my parents since I was still in high school, so I got to save most of that. This was always going to be a part-time job for me because I was fully committed to going to college. It wasn't until recently that I've been seeing the other side of that. More on this later. I remember taking my paychecks and investing them into the same mutual funds that my dad used for retirement because I had no idea what I was doing at the time, but I knew I wanted to get started with investing. It was an interesting time to start investing because we were already past the market bottom, but we didn't know this at the time, so fears were still high. In the fall of 2011, I was moving on to college. After dozens, maybe even billions of tickets ripped, I had about $3,000 in investments and about $500 in cash. It wasn't much, but also not bad for a kid graduating high school in 2011. All right, so my cat decided to plop down on my desk while I was recording. So, going into college, I worked random part-time jobs while studying for my engineering degree. I refereed college intramural sports, I delivered food for Grubhub, I worked in my engineering lab, and I also 3D printed jewelry. Yep, you heard that right. I helped design and manufacture women's jewelry at a startup. Suze, who is the founder, is a really inspiring entrepreneur who really helped spark my interest in that world. Because college is expensive, I was pretty broke, so I wasn't able to put too much more money into my investments. This is something that I never really gave a second thought. I was spending all this money to get this degree, and I never asked myself if I really needed it. So, you know, back in my day, going to high school, it's like drilled into your head that the only path in life is to go to high school, then you go to college, then you get a job, and then you just get money from that job and then work till you're 60 and retire. This might be similar today, but having a fully developed internet ecosystem has opened so many doors for people to get an education, to get a job, and even to start a business all online. Looking back, I really wish I had weighed the benefit of getting a degree versus the opportunity cost of a lot of time, money, and experience. This is something that you should do as well if you're at that point in life. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to college, but really think, what will it do for you, and is it worth the investment? So anyway, by the time I graduated college, I wasn't able to put too much more money in over the 4 years, but still like a decent amount. I was able to contribute another $2,000 over those 4 years. But thanks to the bull run, my investments had reached $8,000. I'll take that any day. In June of 2015, I started my first full-time job at Accenture, a large tech consulting firm. Here's where things start to ramp up. My starting salary was kind of low since my GPA wasn't very high and my major wasn't ideally what they were looking for. It was well below the median income in the very high cost of living Washington, D.C. area, which is where I just moved to for the job. I saved as much as I possibly could while still enjoying my 20s here and there. It's a great time in your life, so definitely enjoy it while it lasts. Just don't go too crazy. No one expects you to have a lot of money, so living below your means is socially acceptable. So, you know, live with a roommate, stop buying Starbucks coffee, cook at home, buy non-branded clothing, you know, stuff like that, which helps you lower your expenses. Hell, I'm 27 and I still do those things. Sure, it was $8 on Amazon. My first year on the job, I remember having to throw literally one entire paycheck just to rent. I had to use the other paycheck for things like food, entertainment, other living expenses for that month. My company had great 401k matching, which was dollar for dollar up to 6% of your salary. So I put 6% of every paycheck in order to maximize this because it's literally free money. Next, I would put the maximum 10% of each paycheck into the stock purchase program, and this was on top of the 6% going into my 401k. This is where you could buy the company's stock at a discount, and there are multiple companies that do this. Again, this was a no-brainer since Accenture is a solid company, so at worst case, it was a 15% ROI. If I had invested that money manually, it would have been very unlikely that I could have beaten it. Plus, since the markets were booming, it was much more than a 15% ROI. I didn't realize how awesome this was until I left the company. So if your company does something like this, and hopefully it's a solid company, you should absolutely maximize this. It kind of sucks to have even more money deducted from your paychecks, but at the end of the day, it still goes into your net worth, unlike taxes, and you oftentimes get like a 5 to 10%, even like 15%, how I got, discount like right off the bat. After the 401k and stock purchase programs, and all the other deductions like taxes, insurance, and just living expenses in general, I was left with a little bit of money to save each month. I'd put some of this into a high-yield savings account so I could maximize my returns while building up an emergency fund. I'd put the rest into a stock market in both a Roth IRA and a regular account, and I studied up on best investing principles. Thankfully, in 2015, there were very few bad investments to make since everything was going up like crazy. I've always been a fan of tech companies, so I put most of my money into an index fund called FTech. The core holdings of this are companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Visa. No surprise that this gave a pretty solid ROI. By the end of my first year working at Accenture, I was 24 and a half and had about $30,000 to my name. $25,000 was across all my investment accounts, and I had $5,000 in cash in my high-yield savings account. Near the beginning of my second year working full-time, I received a promotion and a pay raise. This was pretty exciting since I had put a lot of time and effort into getting the promotion. I worked nights and weekends learning the skills required for not only my job, but also my coworkers.
So let me give you a major key.
This is a major key if you're trying to succeed in life. Never ever stop learning new skills. For example, at your job, don't just be happy learning what you're supposed to do, learn the jobs of the person to the left and to the right of you. Or actually, this might be reversed, so left and right. This will make you more valuable and more irreplaceable. So anyway, the pay raise was a significant bump compared to what I was earning at the time, but this was still below the median income in my area. But here's the thing, I didn't change my lifestyle at all. I kept my spending to a minimum, and I was still cheap as hell. And I still am. Again, $8 Amazon t-shirt. Instead of throwing 100% of a paycheck away to rent, it was now more like 75% of a paycheck. This also means I got to save a lot more from the other paychecks as well. I continued to put the maximum 6% of my paychecks into the 401k, and I continued to put the maximum 10% into the employee share purchase program, which also scaled up with my pay raise. On top of that, I kept putting as much money as I could into the stock market. I still kept a lot of my money in FTech, but this time I diversified a little bit more, putting a lot more money into the S&P 500 index fund, FXAIX. I also bought some individual stocks in companies which I just really liked, like Apple and Amazon. By the end of my second year at a full-time job, I had managed to grow my savings to $85,000. This included $75,000 across all my investments and then $10,000 of cash in my high-yield savings account. At this point, I had 6 more months until I turned 25. Nothing changed from the previous year. I was still at my same salary, and I was still pumping as much money I could into my investments and watching them grow. Right around my birthday, I hit a net worth of around $105,000. This was done through consistent investing, even when people were running around saying that the bull run was over and the recession was coming, even though we know that this went on for another 5 years, until the C word hit. I really don't consider myself that successful because there's plenty of others who have made like $1 million by age 26. But I do think it's a solid accomplishment and one that I'm pretty happy with. A frugal lifestyle also helped with this. No fancy cars, no big apartments, and no designer clothes. My lifestyle was not and still is not lavish at all. My car is pretty beat up with holes in the bumper and my license plate keeps falling off. I live in a relatively small apartment with cheap rent. And again, $8 t-shirt. No keeping up with the Joneses, just living below my means. At the end of the day, money can buy you comfort, but it cannot buy you true happiness. In fact, there's a psychological effect called hedonic adaptation. Hedonic adaptation. Hedonic. In fact, there's a psychological effect called hedonic adaptation, where basically your level of happiness always returns to a baseline, no matter what kind of positive or negative stimuli you experience. Bought a new car? Sure, it feels great driving it around for a couple months, but eventually you get used to it and your level of happiness just returns back to that baseline level. Then you have to buy something else to get that rush of dopamine and the cycle continues. The result of hedonic adaptation is the hedonic treadmill, because you're always running on a treadmill, reaching for that carrot, trying to get that fix of dopamine. It sounds kind of sad at first, but if you think about it, let's say your goal is to buy like a Lambo or a big mansion or something else really expensive. This realization kind of frees you from that. There are so many rich and famous people that are just absolutely miserable because of the same effect. So again, money does not buy true happiness. It only buys comfort. So hopefully this inspires you to start saving more money and to focus on the really important things in life. Plus, while getting to that first $100,000 is difficult, getting to that next $100,000 gets easier. Like my first 100K took 8 years to build up. However, just 2.5 years later, I've almost reached the next 100K. Your money will start compounding on itself faster and faster the more you have. So saving as much as you can now will set you up with way more later down the road. So with all that, I really hope this video inspires you to save and invest as much as you can, especially in your early years. If you want to learn more about finance in general, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Gently pat the notification bell. If you have any specific questions about me or personal finance in general, let me know down in the comments below. I'll be as much of an open book as I possibly can. I read and respond to every single one, as long as they're not negative or toxic, and I even throw in the heart too. All right, safe journeys, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.